Now I want to show using an existing project folder and putting that under source control management with Git. All right, let's head back over to our Linux Mint installation. And we're currently in our terminal. I'm currently in the projects folder within our user's home directory. If we do an ls, we have our existing local-demo, which I just removed the .git folder, which removed any of the history and any of the changes in the repository, so that local-demo is no longer under any kind of management by Git. That's okay, because that's exactly what I want to do. I'm going to go into the local-demo, do git status. Of course, we have the error message like we had before because we don't have a Git repository yet. Do an ls here, and we have those 3 files. So this could be an existing project with existing source code. We're going to place this repository under Git control by initializing this folder. Git init, and then a period. Now we have initialized the Git repository in the current folder. If I do git status, Git tells us we're on the master branch, there are no commits yet, and that we have untracked files, which are the 3 files that are in this folder. Let me show that again. All right, so to do that, we can use the add command. Now to do that, we can use the period like we've done before, but I want to show you one more option. We can use the -A. Now the only distinction between using a period and a -A is that the -A will do all changes that are detected in the local repository. That is, any adds, updates, or deletes. Whereas doing just the period will only do any adds or modifications, but any deletions won't be included. Now, of course, we're not deleting anything, so we don't actually need to use A, but I want to show you this option anyway. All right, let's do git status now. And now we have all 3 files in the Git staging area. If we do git ls files, now all 3 files are being tracked. Let's move forward with our first commit. Initial commit, adding project. Now if I do a git show head, you can see the details of our first commit. And press Q to exit out. Finally, let's do another git status, and we're back on the master branch with nothing to commit. All right, so we have simply our first commit and that we've added all our files. Now, there's one thing that's part of this status command, and that was also part of the other local status commands a little earlier on. We didn't have anything referring to origin master. Now, in part 1, since we started on the remote side, the git clone command set up everything for us so that it tracked against our remote repository, origin, and then on the master branch. So we're able to compare our local repository on the master branch and our remote repository on the master branch. Well, we don't actually have that relationship yet. So now that we have placed an existing project under source control management, it's time to set up that remote repository that is on GitHub, so then we can link it to our local repository. All right, let's head back over to our web browser. And this time, we're going to open up a new tab and go to github.com. If you're not already signed in, take a moment to sign in. Now, I already have a repository named github-demo from our part 1 in this series. However, you might be wondering, hey, why not just use that repository? And the answer is basically, what we worked on our local system is a completely different project. So I like to create independent repositories for each and every project. Besides, we've already started committing to the Git repository on our local side, which means we have a completely new history. And it really gets sticky when you're trying to combine histories. So we're just going to create a new repository so that we can link the two together. Now, we've already gone through this in part 1, so we'll go through this again, but a little faster. Repo name, I'm going to name it the same thing that I have on my local side. Local-demo. The only real requirement here is that it just has to be unique for my account. For the description, which is of course optional, this is an example repo that was created locally first. We're going to leave it as public. This is the important part. We don't want to check this. Now, when we did the remote first approach, we checked this and it created a README file for us, which of course created its first commit. That allowed us to clone the repository onto our local system. However, in this case, we already have a repository on our local system. So if we were to initialize it, it would cause conflicts immediately. So let's keep things simple and not make things any more complicated than they need to be. So leave this unchecked, leave the add git ignore as none, and the license as none. Now let's create the repository. Whenever you go through this process, that is creating a completely empty repository on GitHub, you end up with this page. It gives you some instructions on what to do next. Go down and find the instructions that begin with git remote and then git push. In this case, it should have the URL that includes your username and whatever repo you named it. The first command is git remote add origin. So basically, we're using the git remote subcommand. Within the remote subcommand, there is a subcommand called add. That adds a remote reference named origin. And then origin has a URL associated with it, which is where the remote repository actually lives. So in this case, it's the HTTPS URL to our GitHub account and the repository we just created. Great. Let's copy this line and add it to our clipboard. Now, origin is the name of the remote reference for this link back to the repository. If I head back over to my terminal, I want to use the git remote command to show that we actually don't have any remote references set up. Git remote -v, and there's currently nothing set up. When it comes back like that, there's nothing for Git to show you. Now, let's paste in that line that should be in our clipboard, and then press enter. Now, if I do a git remote -v, we have the name origin listed twice. Almost 99% of the time, this is going to be the case. Very rarely will they be different. We can also use another command, git remote show origin. And right now, it shows remote origin. That's just the name of the remote. And then the fetch URL and the push URL. Again, technically, they could be different, but practically, they usually aren't. And then we haven't set up any tracking branches yet, so that piece is left empty. All right, let's head back over to our browser, and let's get the last line, which is the git push command. Now, we've actually seen this push command before. We covered that on part 1, so I'm going to copy that. Now, the only piece that's different here is the -u sets up a tracking branch relationship. That is, it's saying that the local branch master is going to be related to the origin reference with the master branch. All right, so now let's paste in that line and then press enter. Now I'm going to be prompted for my username and password. If I did that correctly, we should have a fairly good response back. You can see here towards the bottom that we pushed our changes to the HTTPS URL to our Git repository within our account on GitHub. We created a new branch master from our local branch master. And at the very end, we have branch master set up the track remote branch master from origin. Now let's do the git remote show. Git remote show origin. Now we have more information. We have head branch, that is the main branch, is master. We have the remote branch master is tracked, which the next two things are really kind of the same thing, just repeated. So master merges with remote master, and then master pushes to master. Those two things are basically saying the same thing, which is effectively that our master branches are tracked together. Well, now that we have pushed our changes up, let's review this on GitHub. So go back to the browser. And now all we have to do is refresh this page. If everything went well, we should be able to see that we have all three files now on our GitHub repository with one commit. We also have a single branch on GitHub, which is also the default branch. If we click on code, we go back to the main page. We see that we have that initial commit that we did on our local system. All right, great. Now we can move on to the next and final part of our lesson,